What's up, guys? Saf here on SuperSaf Speaks, and welcome to episode number 17. Is it 17 or is it? I can't remember. Anyway, new
17.
new episode, new episode with myself, your host SuperSaf, and my co-host.
Thunder E from Border Work. I got it right this time.
Yes, you got it. You got it. He knows who he is today, so things are looking good. We're off to a good start. All right, so we've had some new Galaxy books, which we're going to talk a little bit about. iOS 14.5 is out as well. We've actually had, I'd say, the biggest leak of the iPhone 13 coming up with some images as well. So if you're watching the video version of this, that will be something exciting to have a look at. And then we've also got some miscellaneous stuff. So, this podcast is not just about tech, but we're going to be talking about Mortal Kombat. A film that me and E were very much excited to see. And we're also going to talk a little bit about the Oscars. I tweeted a couple of days ago, Riz Ahmed was nominated for the lead acting award. And, I just want to touch on the diversity in mainstream media. I want to talk a little bit about that as well. So lots of different topics today. So, E, firstly, Galaxy Book. Samsung has come in with some very small and very light Galaxy Books. We've got the Galaxy Book, we've got the Galaxy Book Pro, and the Pro 360. So the Pro and the Pro 360 are kind of the main ones. So just to give you a bit of a quick rundown for those of you who are not aware, you get them in two versions, 13.3 inches and 15.6 inches. They do have AMOLED Full HD screens. The Galaxy Book Pro starts with just 0.87 kilograms, so it's very, very light, around 11.2 millimeters thin. And then the 360, which does have the full 360, it's a 2-in-1, so you can flip the screen on itself. That starts at just 11.5 millimeters thin, and it's just over a kg. It's like 1.04 kg. Obviously, the 15-inch versions are a little bit heavier. You can get them with 11th gen Intel Core processors, i3, i5, i7, Intel Iris X graphics on the 360. You've got Xe graphics on the Pro, and then you've got up to 32 gigabytes of LPDDR4 RAM, 1 terabyte NVMe SSD. The 360 comes with the S Pen, so it's a touchscreen that comes with it included. And both devices do have a 65 watt compact fast charger. You can get a decent amount of charge in just 30 minutes. And pricing, so in the UK anyway, the 13.3 inch starts at £1,100 for the Pro, and the Pro 360 starts at £1,100. There is not going to be any 5G available in the UK, but in the US, and I'm not sure any other regions, there will be 5G for the Galaxy Book Pro 360. So, I mean, they look pretty promising on the offset, but you have actually had some hands-on time with them, and you've posted a video. So I'm really interested to hear your thoughts.
The first thing you notice is, even though the weight of the 13.3 inch is lighter than the 15 inch, the 15 inch feels super light. I mean, very, very light.
Is that because it's kind of spread across a little bit more, so it's like the weight balance is just okay.
Yeah, it is, and they use something they call Series 6 aluminium. Sorry, all depending on how you want to pronounce it. But it feels really, really light. Now, that title used to go to the LG Gram laptops. I would say this is giving it a run for its money. There are a couple of things about the device that are interesting. There's some things I like and I don't like. I know that the Pro has an AMOLED display. The Pro 360 has a Super AMOLED display. So there's actually a difference in displays. But also resolution is capped at 1080p, which I've seen some people already comment on my video saying, you know what, I don't want, that's kind of useless. But then again, do you really watch anything in 4K on screens like that? Just putting that out there, so to speak.
I mean, I'm assuming battery life was one of the concerns when you're looking at high resolution. Obviously, it has an impact on battery life. So I think that was
absolutely.
Okay.
I think that's one of the things they did. It felt comfortable to use. It was nice. The S Pen doesn't require any charging, so it's basically a standard Wacom S Pen. or at least Wacom Pen. Has some of the S Pen features. They also mentioned it had some of the linked Windows and Galaxy features, similar to what Huawei has, where you can transfer files. You've got that AirDrop type capability, text messages and things like that, which I do like, because one of the big things that I've noticed more, not for myself, but because Board Femme is now using a PC and she complains that she doesn't have AirDrop. She just can't transfer files over. She's switched from a Mac. And I wish Microsoft would just work on something that's a general app that you can download and just use. I think that would be great, for you to do that. But
so currently that's across, because when I was watching the presentation, they were saying across Galaxy devices. So you do have that AirDrop, but you have to kind of have a Galaxy device to be able to fully take advantage of it, should we say?
True. I mean, which is fair, though, because with AirDrop, you have to have the Apple ecosystem, right? You must be in that ecosystem. So
that is true, but there's a lot more segmentation on the Android and the Microsoft side of things, right? So it's not like everybody because I mean, generally speaking, most people who have an iPhone also have a MacBook. They'll be that ecosystem is a lot more. It's a lot more established. It's a lot more. There are a lot more Apple users who have both, right? They have an Apple smartphone as well as a MacBook.
No, I do agree. And I think maybe this might be the beginning of something interesting for Samsung. And they kind of started it last year when they did some briefings and they talked about, we have devices that help you work from home. And now they've done an unpacked for a Galaxy Book. They've never actually done an unpacked for a Galaxy Book, whether it's online or usually it's just an announcement or it's tied to other bigger announcements per se, like with your smartphones. So maybe this is them trying to create that, expand on that ecosystem that technically they do have, at least on a smaller scale.
That's a very interesting point, because they marketed this as the most powerful Galaxy, right? And honestly speaking, that got a lot of people thinking it's going to be the Fold, right? Because they've never kind of referred to the Galaxy Book series in that sort of respect, right? Mm-hmm. So that was an interesting. I mean, I'm not sure, because there were so many people who just thought it was going to be the Fold, and they might have been disappointed, because when you kind of think Galaxy, you think smartphone, right? So it looks like they are trying to change that perception now to make it across the board. So it's like, hey, you've got laptops, you've got tablets, you've got smartphones. We are giving you the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that's what they're trying to do. And I think if they get some of that software component well, especially, the AirDrop type features, the texting, being able to connect all your Galaxy devices. And one more thing, which I'm actually going to bring up I have a TV video coming up, but the idea of calibrating your TV, a lot of people have Samsung TVs. There are more Samsung TVs than most TVs out there. And a lot of people have Samsung phones. So why can't I do the same thing Apple is doing with Apple TV to calibrate my TV? So again, I can see them doing this, but I don't know if they will. It looks like this is a good start to that. But in terms of computing, though, it's got the standard 11 Gen XE specs that we've seen released lately, and hopefully it performs the same way. We've seen some good performance from the Surface Laptop 4, which everyone's been kind of praising, like, it's much better, some good improvements. So hopefully it kind of continues with that. Like, I didn't spend enough time to say this is definitive, but the most definitive thing is, if you have the 15-inch, it's like carrying a notebook. It is so light. It's very, very light. It's scary. Plus, it still has the HDMI port too as well. So
yeah, it was interesting, because seeing how thin it is, the USB-A port and the HDMI kind of look like they're literally just about fit. Because otherwise, anything more, it'd just break the device. So, I mean, it's nice that they've actually gone ahead and included those things. So yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, one thing I hope they continue is the simple SKUs on this, because it's basically just two devices and two SKUs each. There's a 13, there's a 15 for both the Pro and the Pro 360. Done. Yeah, and you can just increase RAM. That's all you need to do. Done.
Yeah, so, I mean, they're keeping it simple, but it's good to keep things simple. It just gives uses a lot less to kind of think about. It's just like, I'm going to go out there and just pick one of these up. So yeah, I mean, they look promising. We'll see. We'll try to get some more coverage with them. Definitely let us know what you guys think. If one of the tricky things with this podcast is because it's multi-platform. It's like on YouTube you can just comment, but one thing that I think we really need on podcasts is like a comment section for each individual podcast. I know Apple's had a kind of refresh.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, honestly, it would be nice to have that.
Yeah, because then when you're talking about, you have some discussions around an individual podcast episode rather than just collectively. But anyway, if you're on YouTube, you can drop a comment and let us know what you think of the Galaxy books. But I like seeing more competition and a bit more variety in this space as well, especially considering that so many people are now relying on laptops, working from home and things like that. So let's see. All right, iOS 14.5. So it just came across a couple of days ago. Installed it right away. One thing that I love about Apple updates is like all my devices get the alert at the same time, so I can just update them all together. Now, there's a few things on here. So we've got face mask unlock is one of the main ones. We've got AirTag updates. We've got app tracking transparency. And then you've got dual SIM 5G support enabled. You've got new emoji characters. The main one being that you have beards for all. So that's something that I'm definitely happy about. And you can also set a preferred music streaming service via Siri, right? Now, I kind of want to talk about the two main things here. Firstly, the face mask unlock. We have spoke about this on the podcast previously. So one of the issues...
What's the second one? Is it the beard, right?
Of course. But we've talked about this before. Face ID is absolutely great, but one of the issues that we've had more in recent times with Face ID is we're all wearing face masks, and obviously Face ID can't work when you've got a face mask. And I've had this situation many times. I'm in the supermarket. I'm doing some shopping. I want to check my shopping list, and then I try to unlock my phone, and you're just so used to the action of just face unlock, and it doesn't work, and you have to enter your passcode in and stuff. So Apple have kind of tried to find a solution, like at least an interim solution to this situation. However, you do need an Apple Watch. Now, if you have an Apple Watch, it's very easy to set up. You can just go into your Face ID settings. You can enable that, and you can set it up with your Apple Watch. So essentially what happens is if the iPhone notices that you've got a face mask on and you have enabled your Apple Watch, what it'll do is it'll just give you a quick buzz on your Apple Watch, and it'll let you in to the phone, right? So it is obviously, now you're not going to be able to do more advanced things like, you're not going to be able to go into particular apps and things like that because security, obviously. But it's nice to have. So I'm glad this is here. I've always said that I think the next iPhones, I would like to have a combination of Face ID as well as some form of Touch ID, whether that's in the display or whether that's in the power button, right? But I have to say that this is definitely a very useful thing for a lot of people. Remember, you do have to have an Apple Watch. If you don't have one, then you're not going to be able to use this feature.
Yeah. I mean, you know how I feel about this stuff in general. I do like that the update does contain the ability to unlock with your Apple Watch. I still kind of feel that Apple kind of they made decisions maybe a little bit short-sighted from last year, just because COVID started at the beginning of the year, and I know production still didn't start till probably around late June, which hopefully I thought they would have added a fingerprint sensor, whether it's on the button or something.
Yeah.
That's just me. But
I still think
addition is there.
With the scale that Apple produces devices, I think for them still it would have been quite late in the day. And this will kind of bring us on to the next topic about the new iPhone. Like, we're already starting to see leaks, even though we're months away, right? And I think that's one of the things with Apple devices. They get them, like, the production and everything in the background has to start so early to get the numbers ready for the time of distribution, that making any sort of change. I remember Carl Pei was talking to Marquez about this, and how it works. You can't make a change. I mean, it you have to kind of have this kind of embedded in the whole process of building the device very, very early. So I think maybe the iPhone 13 we'll have that. Now, before we talk about the iPhone 13, I do also want to touch on the privacy update. So I actually really like this. Now, we've got app tracking transparency. So by default, now if you open an app and that app is going to be requiring to track you for ads, then you will get an alert and you can actually say, no, I don't want this app to track me. Or you can go into your privacy settings, better yet, and you can just switch it off completely. So the app is not going to even ask you. It's just not going to track you, and it won't even come to the point where it'll ask you, can I track you or not? It's just like, you've already told it no. Like, there's already a sign on your door saying, no, I do not want any junk mail. Stay away from here, sort of a thing, right? And I really, really, really like this because, obviously we've talked about Facebook before and the ads that you get. And, I don't mind a little bit of tracking. Okay, let me just make this clear. I get the whole how these systems work. But there is a point where it gets a little too creepy. Now, I want to give you an example. So a couple of years ago, me and my brother, we were at my parents' house where there's no smart speakers or anything like that. We're just having a conversation, and my brother was like, hey, my his boys, my nephews, are really getting into wrestling, so WWE, and they were like, he was like, I'm thinking of getting them some championship belts, right? Just so they can have a bit of fun and stuff. So I'm like, that's a really good idea. Anyway, I go back home. The next day, I open Facebook, and guess what? I've got an ad for wrestling belts on Amazon on my Facebook. And I'm like, hold on, I have not searched for this anywhere. I have not done anything. I just literally had a conversation. Now, I actually went onto the radio about talking about this as well. The only way I can figure out, I don't think, my phone was listening to me or anything like that. I think what it was my brother obviously was searching for championship belts, right? WWE championship belts. And I'm assuming that obviously because he was searching for it, whatever, Facebook obviously, because they've been tracking him, they kind of know that he's interested into this. And what Facebook's basically done is kind of thought, oh, hey, this is his brother, right? They have similar interests. They have mutual connections. They both live in the same area, etc., etc., etc. Maybe Saf will also be interested in this, okay? And it's showing me these belts, right? And I'm like, man, that is creepy, because that is now you're going to a point where it's like, look, I don't mind a little bit of targeted ads, but now this is getting into my personal space. Like, I mean, who knows? My brother could have been searching for something dodgy, right? Something questionable. Now I wouldn't know it was him, right? But this, for me, and I really like that now I have the ability. Obviously, Facebook doesn't like this, but I really like that this is now embedded within iOS.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a good thing in general. I will point this out that Windows has had this for quite a long time, by the way, but it is good to see more and more. Of course, Google will not necessarily implement something like this because they too are in the business of tracking. Even though Google has done something a bit different and weird, is that they said they are going to shut down tracking. Some of the crawlers that they use for Google search, because they're using an implementation which forces everybody to use theirs because Google is the only search engine. But in terms of what Apple is doing, I think it's solid, like all around solid in general, and also a great marketing tool. And no matter how you look at it, I always look at it both sides, is that this is a great thing for Apple to look and say, hey, look, we don't do this, but this is something we do for the customer, and let's press on this because we are actually giving them a service that, in all fairness, there's no direct financial benefit. Like, there's just no direct path there. The only financial benefit is that there's trust, and then you buy more Apple products, which is, in a sense, a better financial benefit for a company like that, to say, okay, let's build that trust with them with this. So it's good to see, and maybe this will also help Facebook innovate and find better ways to give us that tracking data that they need so much, or at least is required for their business. But it's one of those things where I think we've all thought, when Facebook started doing, Facebook companies like started doing tracking, I think we all thought that we were a society that was going to elevate into some of the sci-fi movies and novels we've read, and not understanding that we're not the case. We are the other side type of society. So some of these things need to be curtailed, like, whether it's self-policing within the industry, which is some of what this is, and maybe also better restrictions from like the Congress in the U.S. or the EU or Parliament in the U.K., where some of these things need to be curtailed, where companies need to understand, and even a company like Facebook also needs to understand it needs to diversify its business, like. As much as they're doing really well, but they need to be doing other things. Because if you look at Apple has multiple product revenue streams. Look at Microsoft. Its biggest revenue earner now is cloud computing. Azure servers killed it this quarter like crazy. And this is something that Microsoft was lagging behind only a few years ago. And now they're competing against Amazon neck and neck. So it's one of those things that I think maybe this is a wake-up call for Facebook to go, what else can we do? Like, what else can we do business-wise? We've got a lot of money. We can jump into other segments and let's try and do something, as opposed to just trying to, milk its users to death.
To the point where they just, I mean, yeah, as I said, the tracking does get creepy, but there is also an element of Facebook versus Apple, because Apple is now very much seen as this, as you were saying, this company that really values your personal data and your privacy. And we've seen iMessage and compared to WhatsApp, for example, where WhatsApp, we've talked about WhatsApp on the podcast in the past few months as well, because they're updating their privacy policy, and it's a whole thing about we don't trust Facebook and we don't trust WhatsApp, but we do trust Apple, right? And we trust them with our data, and that's something that I think is really important. And I mean, iOS 14 generally, I'm liking it so far. It's I think those are the two main key features, and the unlocking, that's definitely, I mean, I was just testing it out, and it does definitely make a difference if you have an Apple Watch. If you've not already downloaded and installed iOS 14.5, then I would say I definitely recommend going ahead and doing that. We've got the Apple AirTags, we've got some updates, so then if you've got one of the newer iPhones with the U1 chip, you're going to be able to kind of track your AirTag more precisely, so precision finding through there. I've been enjoying AirTags. It's funny because I got AirTags yesterday, and I attached it to my keys, and then I lost my keys that same day, and I was just like, okay, where did I put them? Because I wasn't sure where I put them. So then I pulled up my Find My app, and I actually had left them downstairs, and I was just like, oh, brilliant, like perfect. Already, I'm sold on AirTags. So yeah, based on that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
speaking of AirTags, though, I really feel bad about Tile, because that's the end of the company. It's done.
Yeah, I mean, they've still got some niches, because I was listening to somebody, I believe it was Marquez, talking about, like, you've got some more flat tiles which you can put in your wallet, for example, because right now, one of the things that I lose more than my keys is my wallet, right? I always put it in a few different places. Now, one of the, like, if I had something a bit more flat, which was like a credit card, for example, which I could just put amongst my other credit cards in my wallet, that would just make a lot more sense, because I could still track my wallet down if I needed, right? Right now, I'd probably have to put it in the coin section, which is, a little bit weird. Also, the other thing with the AirTags is they get scratched up so easily. I was putting it inside the leather keyring, and I managed to scratch it just doing that.
Oh wow! Okay.
Because it's just pure shiny stainless steel. That kind of look only lasts for a few seconds, and then it just gets scratched up like anything. So that's another thing just to keep in mind. But I absolutely love. I mean, I think AirTags are going to be so successful because they're so simple and so easy to set up, and they're actually reasonably priced as well. I can see people just picking up a 4-pack, sticking one in your bag, sticking one in your luggage, right? Because somebody actually commented on my Instagram post, and they were like, oh, can I put it in my luggage? Because then if my luggage gets lost, I know where it's going to be roughly, right? Because it's interesting what it does as well, because it uses other iPhones, because it's using Bluetooth Low Energy. Now, if you lost your bag in the woods, right, then you're going to struggle finding that, because there's not going to be other iPhones nearby, right? But if you were to lose your bag in an airport or anywhere like where there's going to be other people kind of walking around, then you're going to be able to find that much more quickly, because it's actually using very privately and securely other people's iPhones to kind of beam that location back to their servers, so then you can track it down from where you are.
Can we say Apple tracking right there?
Well, Apple is. I mean, it's tracking, but it's all encrypted and it's private, and they don't get to see that information. It's only for you. It's only for you and your account for your Apple ID to see that. So yeah, there you go. He's stroking his beard. This is how you stroke a beard. Anyway, so iPhone 13, right? So we've seen
Yeah.
some early rumors. Now there's been some leaks on Weibo. So there was some CAD designs that were released last week, right? And now we've actually had a physical iPhone 13 mini prototype, or whatever you want to call it, that has been leaked, which is quite a detailed image as well. Now, here's the thing. I mean, we already knew that because the iPhone 12 had a fresh design, right? So it's got the flat edges. We're not gonna see a complete overhaul of design anytime soon, right? We knew that it's going to be an incremental update. Now, what we see on this leak is that the camera, I mean, the design is generally the same, right? We've got the flat edges, etc. But the camera module, instead of having the primary and ultra wide camera stacked up and down, it's actually diagonal, right? So that's a slight sort of design tweak that we can see there. The back, I mean, you can't tell if it's actually glossy or if it's matte. They might be going for a matte finish on the iPhone 13 mini and the iPhone 13. So that's something to kind of wait for. But I mean, it's still very early and we're already seeing what this is going to potentially look like, which is what I was mentioning earlier on. So iPhone 13, the other thing that's interesting to me as well, is that we've been hearing that iPhone 12 mini hasn't been doing so well. But considering that we've seen it in this leak, it looks like regardless, Apple is still carrying on with it and they're still going to sell it in the form of the iPhone 13 mini, right? And to me, that says that even though they might not have sold huge numbers, there is still interest there for a mini model, right? So for them, if they're already creating this, they're creating the iPhone 12, it's not that, because I mean, most of the components internally are exactly the same, right? It's just, you're still going to have the same chip, you're going to have the same camera modules, etc., etc. So just making a smaller version for them actually makes it sound like your starting price is lower, firstly. So $699 instead of $799. And even though it's not a huge market like the iPhone 12 and the Pro models, it's still big enough for them to justify doing another one.
Yeah, I mean, I won't call it justification. Remember, Tim Cook, operations guy. What do you do with operations? You maximize your production as much as possible, which is why like I mentioned, we got a new color with the Mini, because when you have excess units or you haven't sold as much, a good way to galvanize a new color, but the better way is to attach that with the one that sells the best, which is the 12, right? You kind of bundle it together. And like you said, it's the same frame, same design. Changing that camera module, it really is not that hard. So I don't think there's that much work in the positioning, if that's going to be the case, according to what we've seen. But they might also keep the same chipset on the Mini, if they wanted to, and say maybe they've improved RAM or improved something to it. Who knows? It might be the same chipset that is just slightly improved, with like a A14
X.
Bionic X or something like that, right? Which
wonder.
again, yeah, exactly. Which again, cost is minimal, and you can go ahead and sell more of this until it's kind of flushed out. Then maybe you don't continue the line, or you just weigh things. You weigh things down the line there. But it's a nice strategy for them.
I think they will have the new chipset across the board. So whatever the A15 or whatever it is, or potentially a version of the M1, as we were saying. But I think it's going to be the same across the board. I think the camera module change is important because that physically tells you that it's a different model, right? Because when you look at it, that's the new iPhone, right? Rather than if it's pretty much exactly the same like they used to do with some of the models when you used to have the S version, right? It was very difficult to actually tell which one was different. But I think now it's like, even if you do a subtle change to the design, which is like a diagonal.
So are we going to have
placement,
4 sensors on the Pro and the Pro Max?
So I don't think so. So we've got the 3 cameras and we've got the LiDAR scanner, and I don't know. I don't think Apple's gonna. I mean, this is just we're speculating here, but I don't think they're gonna go in for another. I mean, what would the other camera be? They're not
Or
in.
would they go? Would they go? Do you think they're going to go with the larger sensor or a different sensor? They've been going with they've had a 12 megapixel sensor from what Sony sensor they've used. Will they go with something different this time?
I think potentially a larger sensor as they normally do, so an improved sensor. The like right now it's just the iPhone 12 Pro Max that has the sensor shift stabilization, for example, on the larger sensor. And if we roll back to I think the iPhone 6s Plus and the iPhone 6s, the Plus had OIS. The standard did not have OIS, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but that was kind of like a physical thing because the Plus had more space to be able to include that. But then obviously as technology improved, the next time they had it on both of them, right? So I'm assuming that the Pro model this time will probably also have some form of sensor shift stabilization. There's a lot of speculation we can do right now, but there's still a long time left. I mean, it's only been 6 months since the previous iPhones came out. So we're looking at roughly another 5 to 6 months before the next ones come out. So, we've still got some time, but I'm sure there's going to be lots more leaks and rumors coming up. Okay, so that was the tech. Okay, let's now mix it up a little bit because this podcast was supposed to be not just about tech, about whatever we want to talk about, what's current topics, whatever you guys want to listen. So let's initially talk about Mortal Kombat. So, I mean, personally, I've been a huge fan of Mortal Kombat from when I was a kid. I remember my uncle had a corner shop, and in that shop he had the arcades, the very first Mortal Kombat arcades, right? And I just remember going in there. I was like, I was obviously too young to play it, but that doesn't matter. Anyway, but just kind of seeing the photo real, even though it was like back then it was, but the photo real graphics, and I remember seeing Goro, and I was just like, whoa. Full armed guy, this is so awesome. So we used to like kind of put the 50p coins inside, and my uncles used to use the keys, take them out from the back, put them back in, so we could play as long as we wanted. But yeah, obviously the franchise has been huge, and we remember the movie back in 1995, and now we've got the new Mortal Kombat movie. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But the first thing I want to talk about, which really annoys me, is the fact that it's an HBO exclusive, which means that HBO Max exclusive, which means that it releases there, but then there's, initially there was no sign. I think right now there's talks about the 6th of May is when it's going to release on other platforms, so they want that to be quite exclusive. But in my opinion, that's very, very stupid. I'm going to just be straight up there, right? Because they did something similar with Wonder Woman, right? And what that does is just encourages piracy, because sure, you can, like I've got a VPN, so you can actually get a VPN and you can, have an HBO Max subscription and you can watch it that way. But the regular person is not going to be able to do that, right? The regular person is going to either ask somebody for a link or to some dodgy website, which will also infect your machine, which is another story altogether. But the point is that it's 2021, right? Gone are the days where you're going to silently wait for a movie to come out for weeks, right? Because there's going to be spoilers online. Everybody's going to be talking about it. It's going to be on YouTube everywhere. It needs to have a synced release, right? And this is something that really, really annoys me about this whole setup. I get the exclusivity element, but there's got to be a way that you can make it available to everybody.
I mean, part of it is not HBO Max's fault. Part of it is Warner Brothers' fault as well, is that, because of COVID and because two things, HBO Max launched last year, subscriptions were a little bit low. COVID was kind of just ruining movie releases, so things were delayed anyway. So in December, the head of HBO Max, Warner Media, which is their parent company, which is also owned by AT&T, by the way, came out and said, look, 2021 movie release slate will launch same day in theaters and also on HBO Max. So for us in the US who have HBO Max, we're like, this is great. And for me, I'm like, yeah, it's fantastic. I don't have to watch it. I was, geared up to watch, the Snyder Cut, so Wonder Woman, Godzilla vs. Kong. The problem here was, and HBO never really addressed this, was they never looked, because they haven't launched officially internationally. Right, they have in their South American launch in June, and the UK is still pending. Which was more surprising because I'm like, that should be the quickest because we both speak English. Like, you should just be able to just transfer that over, right? Not
Yeah.
South America next. But what happened was with the Snyder Cut, a lot of people were like, how are we going to watch this? It's only on HBO Max. It's not even coming to theaters, any theaters anywhere. So they had to form last minute deals so you could show up on Sky and you could show up on different places. And I'm like, I get it. You had to rush this deal, but come on, you guys could have at least thought of a way of saying, okay, look, let it be, at least you can buy the movie and own the movie, right there.
Yeah.
Even if it costs a little bit more, but then at least you know that I'm buying it and I'm done, right? And then you're
Exactly.
going to cut off that piracy that you're going to get, and you're going to have people watch it more, and you actually see a better benefit and more profits, no matter how you look at it.
Exactly, and there's so many streaming services now. YouTube offers streaming, and the ability to buy, rent movies. Amazon, there's so many services out there right now. And sure, if you can't strike up set it up where it's going to be launching in the same country, find an alternative, because otherwise, I mean, I'm sure if you looked at statistics of how much Wonder Woman and now Mortal Kombat was pirated, it's going to be very, very high, because most people are happy to pay and buy and watch a movie that they want to watch, right? But
Yeah.
if it's gonna be 2 weeks later when you've already seen hundreds of spoilers online, then they're gonna be like, okay, you're essentially kind of like putting them into a corner, right? And
Yeah.
something definitely needs to be done about that.
Yeah, it's one thing that affected me. I saw the stats for the Snyder Cut. Somebody posted it up on Twitter as the highest download, most pirated movie for at least the 2 weeks it was out before Godzilla vs Kong came out. It was like a huge margin between everything else, and I was like, I think it was about 2 million downloads. I'm like, that's 2 million people who didn't watch and watched it for free. So
Yep. Now, this also kind of like, before we talk a little bit more about Mortal Kombat, this kind of like brings it back to the streaming situation, because obviously since COVID's hit, people are now like, okay, you've got these streaming options, which totally makes sense. But as if I was a film producer, my kind of thinking would be is, once you're streaming something, it's so much more easy to pirate that than if it's in the theaters, right? You remember back in the day when you get people who used to like bring a camcorder into a movie theater.
Yeah, you see people's heads and
yeah, right. So that's now obviously if it's much more difficult to pirate something when it's in theaters. Now I'm hoping things start going back to normal and people start going back to theaters, because I still think that experience is unique, and you can't replicate that no matter how good your home theater is, right? Just going to the movies is an experience,
for
right?
for certain movies.
Of course, and I mean that's something that me and my friends always get together and go to watch these movies, right? But now once you've got the streaming option, it's kind of like, hey, you know what? I'll just watch it at home. It's just instead of paying however much for a ticket, you could just pay $15 or whatever it is and watch it all together. Just have people over, for example.
Maybe this will help change the way both streaming and movies in theaters work out. So one of the things that I found quite interesting with Mortal Kombat, and then I'm going to compare it quickly to like Snyder Cut and then Wonder Woman, because I saw all three, but one of them I saw in theaters, the other two were streaming. Was with Mortal Kombat, I saw dual reaction from people online. Some people really liked it, and some people didn't really like it at all, right? Which is also the same thing I had with Wonder Woman. I saw Wonder Woman in theaters, and I was like, okay, it's cool. And all my friends who watched it at home were like, this was a bloody waste of my time, And when I kind of watched it again, I was like, this movie's trash, because I sat down at home and watched it again.
Okay,
and then
yeah.
with the Snyder Cut, a lot of people liked it, but also was a very different experience, because now they were like, I would have never watched a 4-hour movie in the theater, but I could watch it at home. This is great.
Very good point. Very good point.
So hopefully this changes where we get like the big blockbusters, like the Godzillas, the End Games in theaters, where you get the full experience. And then even if you want to do something big at home, you can do something, not say like the Snyder Cut, but if you want to make it longer, if you want to make it episodic, if you want to even make it interactive, you can, because you now can tell a different kind of story entirely. for the audience. And you know that, you look, like Disney Plus has 100 million subscribers. Netflix has 200 million subscribers. So which means if you drop it on Netflix, so for instance, I think I saw the tracking. Zack Snyder has Army of the Dead dropping on Netflix in May, and it's supposed to be like a blockbuster just because there's so many people on the platform, and they're all going to be like, okay, what's on Netflix today? Friday, cool, play.
Yep.
You know, so
Yeah.
I think this is going to cause the studios to be at least just more sensible. Like you gotta be smarter because your audiences now have choices. No
Yep.
longer are we forced to be like, okay, what's playing this weekend? I guess that's what we'll watch. You know,
Yeah.
you know, there's a lot of
No,
options there.
it's such an interesting time with theaters and streaming, but yeah, I think going forward it's going to be a bit of a balance because yeah, you're right. Certain movies are just suited for the cinema, and you know, certain movies are better at just being viewed at home. Now, you've seen Mortal Kombat. What are your thoughts? We've actually not talked about this. This is interesting because usually we'd have a conversation about this. Be like, what do you think? But it's like, okay, so this is the first time I'm hearing from E about this as everybody else.
Okay, so I'll put it the best way. Sam and I talked about this. Is my buddy Sam, who you know.
Wait, hold on. So spoiler alert, right? If you've not seen it yet, there's going to be spoilers. Boom. Okay.
Yes, spoilers. So if you shut off your brain and you watch this movie, you will enjoy it. It's fun. It's a fun, gory movie. If you turn on your brain, or you turn on your brain as a Mortal Kombat fan, then you are going to be annoyed. Not of everything, but there are things that just kind of was like, why? Why is Liu Kang behaving like he's a wimp? I'm sorry. You know, why is there this Cole character? You know, when we could have had, you know, heck, you know, a lot of people say just use Johnny Cage as that character. We all know how Johnny Cage is the aloof one sometimes. Go ahead and use him as the character that drives the story. Or, you know, so it had things I liked. Like the first 10 minutes with Sub-Zero and Scorpion. That was beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, and then things got lost somewhere. That's how I kind of take it. So, and then the last fight in the end kind of brought it back together again.
Yeah. So the thing is, I totally agree with you. It's just like one of those where you just switch off and you just kind of see it for the gore and from an entertainment point of view. I love the VFX, by the way. I think the VFX were done really, really well, especially with Sub-Zero and Scorpion. Like they were done so well, and I was just like very, very impressed with how, you know, things were done there. It was just I did enjoy it, but yeah, I think you're right, and I think the fight scenes could have been a little bit better. I mean, they were good, they were gory, but I mean, you know, there was too many cuts, and whenever I like seeing a good fight scene, I like kind of having a bit more you know, it's a little bit more choreographed and it's, you know, a little bit more extended, where it's just like, no, like cut. It's like, okay, no, I want to see more of this sort of. So I think, but I think generally, again, yeah, I did enjoy the entertainment factor of it, should we say, where it's like, you know, just kind of bringing it back to the whole just over the top violence, and you know, just they also slipped in a few of the lines which I liked, and you know, Kano kind of pulling out the heart and stuff, which I did like. So I did enjoy those kind of references.
So who was your favorite character out of all the
Who
characters?
was my favorite character? Probably Sub-Zero, Scorpion. So here's the thing, right?
I was going to say besides those two, because
besides those two, okay.
For me, it was Kano. The guy who played Kano nailed Kano really well.
Yeah,
like absolutely nailed it. Sub-Zero and Scorpion are kind of like, I kind of just put them like they're up here. Everybody else was just below. Those two guys really felt like, oh, these guys have been enemies for ages. Whew, this is gonna be, you know, intense. But Kano was my favorite, in at least besides.
Oh, his performance and stuff was spot on, and just the way he pulled it off really, really well. Now, speaking of Sub-Zero and Scorpion, what's really funny is because I was watching some videos about the background of the characters, and it's so funny how initially the reason why they had Scorpion was because it was easy. It's just a palette change, right? So it's just
Yeah.
like we can save on so much memory on this, little cartridge that we have by literally just repeating him and just changing the color palette. And obviously they did the same with Reptile as well. But it's so interesting how these two characters are like the main characters now. And it's like they look exactly the same and especially if you look at the initial games, it's crazy. But it's just like I think those two, obviously they're iconic characters, and I'm somebody that I love visual effects, and the way they did the Scorpion, the Sub-Zero with the ice effects. Oh
Yes,
man,
yeah.
it was so cool. Like he just kind of like, just puts it through him, takes it out the other side, and it's so awesome. But the obviously the classic line, it just never gets old. Scorpion's line. So even when I watched the trailer, that was the point. It's like, get over here, and it's just like, oh, it's just love it. But yeah, I mean, it is entertaining. I'd say it's worth a watch. Yeah, I totally agree with E, where it's just, it's a little bit sort of, it's one of those where you just kind of switch off and just enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, I think what disappointed me was when you watch the movie, you actually would see a big potential here. The way it was shot and way some of the story elements flowed, you're like, ooh, I can see this running a huge franchise. Like I got that feel from it, but the execution just wasn't there. So it was that's why I was disappointed. When I was like, man, you guys were come on. So my last question is, all right, this Mortal Kombat or the original Mortal Kombat, which is better?
Okay, that's a difficult one because remember you have to remember that I have that special gift where I forget movies when I've not, so I actually have to rewatch that, right?
That's true.
Now,
okay.
I just remember enjoying it as well. It was just like, it
was.
I think they spent like $1 million for the animatronic Goro that they made, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, one thing that I was disappointed with the new one is Goro just kind of looked like it was a development of the one from the 1995 film, right? It's like
they just added a little bit more
yeah.
color and slightly better movements, and let's call it a day.
Exactly. So it was like a 3D version, like a VFX version of the animatronic version that they had in the previous movies. Because I remember as a kid seeing that, and he's just like, he's super wide. His frame is like, very broad, and he's got these big, forearms. With this, he's like, he looks like a worm, basically, right? Because he's like, he's just got these like, he's just extended sort of a thing, right? And I was just like, yeah, I'm a little bit disappointed. And also, he's supposed to be this, prince, and he's like, got these forearms as a massive character.
He lost to Cole.
He lost to Cole, and it was not even like it wasn't like it's just
established character, right?
Yeah.
Like if he lost to any of the established characters, I would be fine with it. I'm like, really? This is who you had beats Goro of all people.
Exactly.
Like, come on, guys. Come
on. So yeah, that's another thing. But I'm gonna have to rewatch the first one. What about you?
Yeah.
Compared to the previous.
Compared to the previous one, I mean, I have to watch it again. I still remember it, but I would say I prefer the original because it was so like, for me, it felt so like I couldn't believe they made a movie from Mortal Kombat, right? And I think the casting was a little bit better. The guy who they picked for Johnny Cage, the guy who they picked for Liu Kang, even I've forgotten the Asian actor, Asian American actor who played Shang Tsung. Very well known like actor in like the Hong Kong movie scene, but everything kind of just looked its part. The martial arts was downright terrible for a lot of things, but I give the slight edge to the original.
Okay, all right. Let us know what you guys think of the latest Mortal Kombat movie. Now, on the subject of cinema, right? I wanted to kind of touch on this because I think diversity is so important in Hollywood and mainstream movies that everybody watches because they have universal appeal right now, right? So Riz Ahmed, who's an amazing actor, is the first Muslim to be nominated for the best leading actor role in the Oscars, right? And that for me was huge, right? Now he didn't win, and I'm not going to go into the debate about who should have won and who shouldn't have. That's people can debate about that everywhere else. For me, it was a big thing because one of the things that growing up that I've always kind of really felt strongly about is the lack of representation in movies, right? Being somebody
Mm-hmm.
who's brown but born and brought up in the UK, right? A lot of people say, "Oh no, but there's Bollywood and there's Nollywood and there's all these other words, right?" It's like, yeah, it's all well and good, but you don't fully connect with those movies. Like, yes, you enjoy them and
Yeah.
stuff, but it's very different, being born and brought up in the West, right? But then, I always say this about Marvel movies, right? You've got the Avengers, right? They can create hundreds of new species of aliens who don't exist, right? But they can't have one brown character, right? It's like one Asian. So I'm talking like South Asian, somebody that looks like me, right? Or Middle Eastern sort of character. They can't have one of those, right? It's just like, come on, you can actually make new species of aliens, but you can't have one of these. And one thing that I want to emphasize is I'm not talking about diversity for the sake of diversity just to tick a box. No, I'm talking about the fact
No.
that there's so many talented actors out there, right? And also, like, okay, so let me give you an example of the UK here. In the UK's, the 2011 census showed that around 7% of UK's population was South Asian, right? Now, there's just been a new census done right now, so I'm sure that number's gone up. Like, so we're talking between 7 to 10%. But do you see 7 to 10% of Asians on television and movies? No, you don't, right? So there's
No.
definitely a
No.
disconnect there. And I was on a documentary with the BBC as well about it was called My British Asian Alter Ego, and kind of the dual identity that a lot of people kind of face, because your parents are from somewhere else, but you're kind of born and brought up here, and then you kind of have this conflict of where do you sort of belong, right? And when
Yeah.
you don't kind of see representation in movies and things that you watch on a regular basis, TV shows and stuff, no, it is getting better, and this is the thing. But when you don't see that, you kind of have much more of a disconnect because you don't really know where you belong, right? And now for me, so it was really significant. So when I kind of posted about it and stuff, a few people were kind of asking me, and for me that was really important, having somebody who's very talented. And you've seen The Sound of Metal, right?
No, I haven't actually.
You haven't seen it. Okay, you
I
gotta
haven't
see
seen.
it. It's,
I haven't seen actually any of the movies in the at least the best actor category.
Okay.
I haven't seen any of those movies yet. But
Okay, all right.
But I mean, but I know. So I know Riz from. He did a HBO miniseries called The Night Of. I believe that's what it's called. He was, and this is before I knew anything he had done, or me before that. But I was like, when he got that role, and it was a bit stereotypical because it was supposed to be played where he was playing a cab driver, and did he do it or did he not do it? So they kind of played into those tropes. But what I enjoyed from him was how he thread the line as an actor, right? Because then you go, this man has range. Like there's the range of skill sets. So for me also it was good to see. You saw that best actor category. You saw Riz, you saw Stephen Yeun from the Walking Dead fame. He's also the voice of Mark in Invincible, and then you see Chadwick Boseman, and also you see Anthony Hopkins. Like it's a range of individuals. It's no longer just one type of person. And to me, it was good to see that. Not because for me, I've looked at it differently. I've never really thought about representation, and maybe just because I grew up in Nigeria, so it's a very different. It might be a different standpoint. I looked at this. Those are American movies, okay, cool. So it's only when I came here to the U.S. where then you start you seen other people's reaction. You look at movies, you go, okay, I saw Will Smith in this. Who else is there? Denzel and okay, that's it. And then then I started understanding that for a while you could only have two big black stars, not male stars or female stars, black stars at the same time. And I'm like, but I've seen some other black actors are really good. They should be, they should be going up. They should be getting more roles. And then black female actresses, and I'm like, it's a tough time, And so I had to now put it in context of if black actors are getting that much, then what's the hope for Asian American actors, and what's the hope for brown actors? It's like you start just taking that scale lower, 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 and or even someone who's of a mixed race, or which I always give The Rock credit because he's half He's half black, half Samoan. He shouldn't really be as big as he is now. But again, it's that struggle that we all, a lot of people of color face in the industry that shouldn't be there, because you're right. Like, a lot of movies should be better representation, and I agree with you. I don't mean it should be something where, yes, let's do this. Like, for instance, there's a talk of a black Superman. I don't want it, because there are so many black DC characters that are well done. Plus, remember, Superman is basically Jewish, so why even change that in the first place? You've got.
You don't need to change the base of the character.
His character, exactly. You've got a black Green Lantern. I remember I saw some guy on TikTok who said, Green Lantern is what DC likes to play around with. They'll play with different alien races and also different, races, or ethnicities here on Earth. And this guy, his daughter wanted to read comics, and he walked into the comic book store and there was a Filipino Green Lantern. And so he was like, no way. So he bought it, gave it to her, and she's like, Daddy, she's like me. And I was like, oh. He was like, what do you mean by me? And because she's like, is it because it's a girl and she's younger? It's like, no, she's Filipina. And I'm like, okay. So, it's that kind of connection that, you can bring in, and you can write very core stories. That's the thing that people forget, that it's not just about, I want to make this character black or white. Sometimes you can make a character a certain race, and even if it's white, right? And have a core story that people will go, man, I never knew, that resonates, so that connects. So people tend to forget that when we ask for diversity, we're saying, take advantage of where that person comes from. One of the big things about, diversity for making proper change was, I remember when they cast Jason Momoa as Aquaman. I'm a lifelong DC fan. Aquaman is blonde, blue eyes, right? Straight up. Jason Momoa is not that. Those are two different things. And they asked Zack Snyder, they're like, why did you do that? He said, he is Polynesian. They and the water, they basically live, breathe the ocean. So he's like, it made sense for me to have something like that because I can tie in those roots. And they kind of tied it even to the Aquaman movie. And you're going, oh. And when you see me, like, yeah. I mean, he's already water people already. So, all right, that makes sense. Even just for a comic book movie. So those are the kind of things that help. And look at it now. Aquaman made $1 billion, right? People were like, that's great. Because people didn't look at his skin color or where he's from. They went, that worked. Yeah. And that's what I think that's what needs to happen, because it just makes more sense.
So this is the thing. I mean, you mentioned stereotypes there, and this is the thing. I'm so fed up with seeing, a brown character being a taxi driver, a terrorist. Let's be real here, right? Okay. The role, I think, one of the jokes Riz says is that he was tired of being terrorist number 2, right? Just being offered roles for that, right? And it's annoying. It's like, because if you see The Sound of Metal, he's playing a character called Ruben, and it's just about the character, right? It's not about, what races. They don't even need to even touch on that, because he's playing a character. I mean, like, look, you know me, right? We're friends. I mean, does it come up like, when I'm with most of my friends, it doesn't even come up like that I'm a brown Muslim, right? It's just that we're buddies. Sure, I don't drink alcohol, and I don't eat pork, right? But that's like a big deal. You could have a vegan that doesn't drink alcohol. That's not a big deal, right? You can still
exactly.
You can still be a normal character, and this is one of the things that I absolutely love about YouTube. And I'm going to go back to this, is because I didn't have to wait for an opportunity. Me and you didn't have to wait for somebody to think, okay, this guy fits the bill, right, for a tech personality or somebody who can be in front of camera. We just picked up the camera and started making content, and built an audience on that. And that's something that I love about YouTube, because it doesn't, you don't have to kind of fight those stereotypes. And I still get, I mean, obviously we get racist comments on a daily basis. I get people say, why are you faking your accent? Where are you from? Where are you from? This is something else that Riz Ahmed talks about. Where are you from? It's like, look, I'm from the UK, right? I'm born and brought up here. I love my country, right? And I'm proud of being from here. If I didn't want to be here, sure, the weather's rubbish, but we all complained about that. But I'd be somewhere else, right? I'd be somewhere else, and this is the thing. I think it's so important seeing somebody like Riz Ahmed, who did an amazing job in The Sound of Metal, but he's such a great actor and just very talented. Seeing him kind of break that barrier now makes me hopeful that we'll see more of this going forward. And it's, there's still a long way to go. Don't get me wrong. There's a long way to go.
Yeah,
but these are steps in the right direction.
I mean, it really makes sense. I think what needs to happen, and again, it all comes down to money, right? And it all comes down to, studios understanding that it's a global audience. And they've kind of understood it where studios pander to China and they do certain things to pander to the Chinese because the Chinese box office is really big, but not understanding what it means. And I'm not bringing up, I'm going to bring up Zack Snyder again because he mentioned something that I found very interesting. And in the Snyder Cut, he had a character, I've forgotten his name in the comic, but he plays a character called the Atom. Same powers as the Ant-Man. He shrinks, to a very small size, but he's of Chinese descent. And they asked him, they're like, "Oh, were you thinking of making a movie with that? If you had gone to continue the whole thing?" He's like, "Yeah, I was going to do an Atom movie in China that we were just partaking in. It was a Chinese movie." And he was like, they were like, "Why? Why not make it?" He's like, "No, because that's where he's from. That's where the character is also based. So let us actually make that superhero from that perspective out, as opposed to be always the American, forces going over, or that whole idea." And I was like, that's actually cool. I mean, like, if that's what the character is, then let's see it from that character standpoint and not necessarily take it from, oh, yeah, sure, he's part of the Justice League, but he's got to come to New York City, and
yeah, I mean, for that particular character, yeah, but I mean, if there's somebody that's born and brought up in New York City, which there's millions, right, in the US, in the UK, literally millions and millions of people who identify, as completely, they are, I mean, I'm much more British than anything else, right? I don't connect with any other place more than Britain because that's literally where I've been born and brought up, right? And I think you've got so many.
Wait, I thought you connected with Singala though, like you have a passport.
Well, I'm an honourable citizen of Singala, but that's the story for another time. But yeah, I mean, I just wanted to kind of touch on this because I just think diversity is so important. And as I said, I think there's a long way to go. But I like that things are changing. I'm hoping that, when for me growing up, there wasn't really much of a role model that I had in like the movie industry and things like that. But I'm hoping that, kids these days can have somebody. You mentioned, like that girl picking up the comic book and see, oh, it's somebody that you can kind of relate to and identify with. Not just, that sort of perception needs to change. And I'm glad it's finally changing. And you're right. A lot of it does have to do with money and where those markets are. But now we are looking at an international market, right? And, The Expanse is a show that I absolutely love because of, again, the diversity there, because they're looking into the future and they're looking at all of these different cultures and stuff. And it's almost like one nation, right? That you've got people from all different races, but then, in a couple of 100 years or something, that's what it's going to be like. You're going to have people everywhere from, you're not going to just go into particular areas where there's just going to be a particular type of person. It's going to be completely diverse and mixed. And that's one thing that I love about the tech community as well. If you look at whenever we get together and the amount of diversity, yes, we need more female creators, which we've talked about before. But generally, when you look at the diversity of the different races and cultures and, everybody's together in one place and we all have a common ground. We all love tech. We all get along absolutely fine. And, that's something that I love seeing. And that's something that we have in the tech community, but we need to see in mainstream media, TV shows, movies, big budget movies, which everybody watches. Not only people from UK, everybody watches across the whole world.
Oh yeah, I mean I think that's the thing people need to understand. It's like you watch a superhero movie. I get like, we talk about it. I talk to my friends about it. My friends in Nigeria are like, did you just watch? Did you see that scene? Like everyone around the world that if you get a chance to communicate with different people, are just talking about it. And then you go on social media platforms, right? You go on TikTok is the best example because you tend to see just a mix, right? And you're seeing people from different places around the world either, acting out the scenes or talking about different things they like. And that is just where we want to get to as a collective. It's like when it drops, it doesn't matter, right? It should be what it should be is the work itself. The work should speak for itself, and not be not. It should not have a disparity. And I know some people will think, and some people will say, yeah, well, it was always this way, or that's what I know. And look, I get it, because from a writer's perspective, and I think this is probably where some of that problem comes. When you go to writing school and you're writing a script, the main character, if you're writing your first script, you always write yourself. And honestly, if I were to write a movie, it would be, the main character would be kind of in line with what I think I am. That's what a lot of people do. So I get that part is difficult, because sometimes you write it because, look, you're white, you write it the way you know. I get it. It's fine, because that's what you know. But try and understand also the world is a mix. Even if the main character is one thing, but understand what does that character interact with around. Because sometimes I think that's the thing that even is also more important with exclusivity is, how is the interaction with characters around the world? If you say the character is in New York and all we see is just one race, that ain't New York.
Exactly. I mean, New York is one of the most diverse places in the world. But I think that's a very good point that you mentioned, that if somebody's writing, they're going to be kind of writing as themselves, which is all well and good. But if you're like, I think one of the things for me, which I always recommend everybody can do if they are fortunate enough to do so, is travel, right? Because when you travel, you get to meet so many different people, and you get to interact, right, with so many different people, that you actually, if you are then writing, yeah, sure, your main character might be somebody that kind of, relates to you, but then the other characters in that story will naturally be from everywhere, because that's what the world is right now, right? We live in an international environment. Borders are there for, physical purposes, but when we talk about it digitally, and we talk about how we all interconnect, there are no barriers, right? Okay,
Yeah.
yes, you have firewalls in places, but people just use VPNs and get over that anyway, right? We live in an international environment, and that's the way it should be, right? And, as I said, I want to emphasize the fact that, I'm not talking about diversity to check a box and for the sake of it. I'm talking about the fact that, there is a clear representation. Represent what's actually out there, right? Everybody's watching your movies. There's people from all walks of life, all different things. Let's kind of see a bit of that, and we are seeing that. We've got Kamal Nanjiani, who's going to be in the Eternals, and he got absolutely ripped for that. I was just like, my man, yeah, keep going, yeah. And he's that's something that I was really happy to see, that we've got some diversity there as well, and hopefully we'll be seeing more. But things are going in the right direction, and I'm very happy to finally kind of see these things go into motion. Still a long way to go.
Oh yeah. I agree. It is expanding. The other brown character I'm excited to see is Kamal Khan, which is Miss Marvel. She has her movie coming up, and she's also going to be in Captain Marvel 2, because I prefer her over Captain Marvel as a character. So I can't wait to see her in action, because again, it's not just even that. Like I said, it's the representation. It's also gender representation. It's also an age representation as well, and showing those demographics where you can go like, oh, I can do this. It kind of reminds me of how whenever people talk about Wonder Woman, they always say Wonder Woman inspires a lot of women, right? And and even in the movie, she's like, you can do it, princess. And some people may laugh at that and understand that, look, for many people, just little things are what help them go over a hump, or see themselves differently and go like, yeah, I can. I think I can do this. I've got that inspiration. So having those different pieces around, people of different races, genders, allows people to move forward, and we get a better community where people can go like, yeah, I can achieve, I can progress, and it's not just always the same person, because gone are the days where it's the same set of action stars. It's
totally.
It's very.
I think you mentioned a really good point there. It's just like kind of seeing that and being like, oh, I can do that as well. Because I've had messages in the past from people saying, it's so good to see somebody like, that looks like me, a Muslim with a beard in a positive light, right? That's, doing well. It's just like, it's inspirational for them. And I'm no role model. Please don't see me as role model. Like, I don't want that responsibility. But it's so whenever I read messages like that, it's like it makes me feel like so good, because it's just like, that's something that I didn't have when I was growing up. So it's just like if a kid kind of sees that and that encourages them even 1% to kind of be like, no, I can do that as well. I can break those stereotypes. I don't need to be typecast in a particular sort of role or just sort of view. I can do whatever I want, and that's something that's so important.
Very true.
Yeah. By the way, you mentioned some Nigerian movies. I think we're gonna have to do a Nollywood review at some point, for sure. Because I absolutely love those.
Oh man, I have not watched one in a minute, man.
We're gonna have to watch them together.
There are quite a few on Netflix, and there was one you sent me the trailer, where the Nigerian guy got married to an Nigerian girl got married to an Indian guy.
Yeah, let's watch that. I thought I heard the reviews were really bad, but let's watch that. And I think we'll kind of just find it. We'll relate to it from a certain aspect anyway.
Oh, let's do this, right? We'll watch a Nigerian movie. We'll watch a Bollywood movie, right? And then we can drop it in different episodes. Let us know what movies to watch, guys. If you're listening on the podcast or you're watching on YouTube, what movies, Bollywood movies and Nigerian movies we should watch.
Yeah, just tweet them to us on our socials. You guys know you can just tweet at SuperSaf Speaks or any one of ours, and we'll see, because that'll be fun. That'll be a new different section to the podcast. But anyway, on that note, as we mentioned from when we started this podcast, it's going to be about tech, but we're going to do other topics as well. We don't want it to be just about tech. So yeah, it was nice to kind of just have this discussion about diversity and just talking about movies as well, which we all enjoy. So definitely let us know if you'd like to hear more of this. And that is the end of the episode, and hope you guys enjoyed it. This is Saf from SuperSaf Speaks with my co-host.
And Thunder E from Border Work.
And we'll see you next time.